All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live again. We are talking again about something nobody has ever heard of. We're talking about biology. We're talking about sexes. SEXES. How many sexes, how many human sexes are there? That's what we're wrestling with today. You would think that this would be an easy answer. Follow the science. But the academic consensus might not be what a lot of people think it is. Perry says, I'm pretty rigid regarding my ice cream lifestyle. You just broke the first rule of this Fight Club. You're supposed to be commenting on the YouTube live, which I'm going to provide you guys with right now. Copy. Okay, everyone pile into YouTube and just start spamming. Just be like this, that, and the other. Try to keep it YouTube friendly. We're going to invite everyone else. I got to do my invites first on Discord. At everyone. How many human sexes are there? We are live. Boom. Shakalaka laka. I mean, the AI system did me a lot of justice in that thumbnail. I think I would be a very, very ugly cross-dresser. But I have, I actually don't know if I've ever been painted up to try to pass as a female before. But I just had a daughter, and I'm sure someday Journey is going to want to paint my nails and paint me up. She will have full carte blanche to do that. Mega says, David time. It is David time. Let me drop a big David link in the YouTube chat here. For anyone that doesn't understand the Pangburnian linguistic, David just refers to shit. So whenever you see David, that means shit. If your name's David, I'm sorry, but your new name is shit. Join the live discussion here.
I don't know why that phrase never gets old.
It just doesn't. Like, just saying, like,
oh, it's
just
two.
saying, oh man, someone just dropped a big David. Wait your turn there, sir. Did CJ just drop that David and run away? Yikes. What a turd. What a turd. Yep. Welcome, everyone. I got a few more shares to make, and then we will get to it. Just listen to the sound of my voice. Let it guide you to the stream. Share with everyone. Give me your credit card number, bank codes, all of that stuff. How many sexes are there? We come debate. That'll get them cooking. Come debate. Should I add pussies on the end of that? No, I shouldn't. No.
Be based.
What would be the base thing to do?
Rage bait, but lightly do it.
I mean, this is Pangburn. We don't really lightly do anything, so. How many sexes are there? Come debate. Right in your face. God, it's so loud. CJ, move to the YouTube chat. The answer is 2. Have a good night, folks. Okay, we got CJ's answer. As always, I'm going to be boring all of you with some reading to kick things off. I forgot to invite our other peeps. We got to get Niv in here. We got to get Docio, Anka. Sometimes I do this randomly, so if people look back on the stream and they see I don't click on them directly to give them a direct invite, it's probably because I know you're probably going to stop by anyway, but whatever. We might not have a lot of disagreement tonight. We might start talking about the interconnection between sex and gender, because that always gets people's panties or boxer briefs in a twist. Kelly says, hi, ready to be bored. Welcome back, Kelly. You are dominating the YouTube chat, and I love you for that. Thank you. Okay. So, where is my stuff? Well, as many of you already know, I use science as a way of knowing, and I rely heavily on scientific academic consensus to do my knowing for me. But in a more high resolution, detailed sense, when it comes to my epistemology, I make correspondence criteria of truth primary, in that I have, at the top of my epistemic goal, I have empiricism and, good rigorous scientific modeling. I make that primary. And then, of course, and I'm giving you just the JTB description, that would be how I deal with truth. The justification part would be, some sort of demonstration. Most of the time that could fall under the category of evidence. It's really hard to find things that aren't really considered evidence. Some statements like action statements like, go clean your room. It's not really evidence. Is it really a testimony? You could maybe find a way to make that sound like a testimony, and then also I have to actually accept the proposition as true in order to have. I have to believe the proposition in order to have knowledge. So let's see, what is the scientific academic consensus on how many human sexes there are? So the broad consensus in biology is that humans have, and I'm hoping that we have some disagreement here and we can sort through this. So even if you disagree with me, even if you disagree what I believe the scientific consensus is, feel free to say so as we go through this. But let me get through the reading first. And everyone on Discord, please have the YouTube stream running on mute, and engage in the chat there as opposed to here on Discord, because it'll just help attract more people to the stream and more voices, and that's ultimately what we want to see. Okay. The broad scientific academic consensus in biology and other fields related is that humans have two sexes, male and female. This is because sex is defined by the type of gamete, reproductive cell, an organism is organized to produce. Male, organized to produce small gametes, sperm. Female, organized to produce large gametes, eggs, ova. This definition is standard in evolutionary biology and reproductive biology. However, there are important clarifications. Some people have differences of sex development, DSDs, also called disorders of sex development, involving atypical chromosomes, hormones, gonads, or anatomy. These conditions are exceptions in sexual development, not generally regarded in biology as additional sexes. Most biologists do not describe DSDs as creating third, fourth, or multiple sexes. A person may be difficult to classify clinically at birth in rare cases, but the underlying human reproductive system is still understood within the male-female reproductive framework. It is also important to distinguish sex from gender, of course. Sex is a biological classification based on reproductive anatomy and function. Gender is studied in fields such as psychology, sociology, and gender studies, and refers to social, cultural, and personal aspects of identity and roles. Different academic disciplines may use different frameworks for gender. So right off the bat, there are going to be a lot of people who conflate sex and gender. That's an old age usage that changed about 20 plus years ago in academia. There was a necessary delineation between sex and gender because just based on observable phenomena that caused us to delineate so we could more accurately describe the human condition. That's why there was a separation. the personal aspects of identity in roles by way of social, cultural, in many times related to biological sex, these kinds of things as they are expressed as identity and roles, we eventually realized that that expression must be separated from biological sex in order to do good science, good, accurate science. Because that's what happens categorically and taxonomically in the philosophy of science. When a new phenomena is observed, it often causes us to go to the philosophy of science and figure out, okay, how do we account for this categorically and taxonomically based on where, let's say, biological ontology is at in this case, and how does it best fit, also considering the trajectory of applied sciences and all of these different things, many considerations. So that's why the delineation. So there are two common usages, for example, for like someone will ask the question like, what is a woman? Well, there are two common usages, right? One common usage, which might be the most popular usage, would be the traditional usage that kind of treats gender and sex synonymously. They'll say like, woman means biological female. And then again, 20 or so years ago, if you want to be, up to date with science and as academic as you can be, which I think people should be striving for that, because that's where you move to higher resolution understandings of things, then you would say that a woman is really a kind of gender expression that would include, in reference to social, cultural, and personal aspects of identity and roles. That would be one of those gender roles. Some people have a really hard time with that. They get all tongue-tied and twisted, and they can't understand it. And they can't understand the reason for the delineation. Like we talked about it with some people the other night, and they were like, well, the only reason why they're trying to change this, change what a woman is because the libtards, want to live in fantasy or something like that. And maybe there are some people out there who are using it that way and trying to do that, but that's separate from like the scientific reasons as to why there was this necessary delineation. Now, someone's going to ask, what about intersex? So by academic standards, intersex is not generally considered a third biological sex. And I say generally, it's not like the leading consensus on how to deal with intersex and counting it as a third biological sex. Instead, it is an umbrella term for a range of congenital conditions in which a person's chromosomes, gonads, hormones, or reproductive anatomy develop atypically relative to typical male or female patterns. Examples include complete and androgen insensitivity syndrome, partial androgen insensitivity syndrome, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, I believe it's Klinefelter syndrome or Turner syndrome. From the perspective of evolutionary and reproductive biology, humans have two reproductive sexes defined by the type of gamete the body is organized to produce. Yes, we already went through that part. A lot of people, I think incorrectly, because it's not the scientific consensus in academia, they will say, there are three sexes, or, that like they'll get on someone like Richard Dawkins' case when he says there are only two sexes. They'll say, well, he's also wrong about that, because Richard Dawkins he's wrong about where academia is at with regards to gender, but they'll say he's also wrong about the sexes part, which he's not. My understanding is this is where the general academic consensus is at. That doesn't mean the general academic consensus won't change tomorrow or the next day. That's the beauty of science. And there are surely some evolutionary biologists and biologists who do consider intersex a third sex. But I'm just giving you the goods on what my research is telling me where the academic consensus is at when it comes to the sexes. And if we don't have a lot of disagreement today, because, ultimately I want to get to the facts here, representing academia as factually as we can, and also representing any concerns or dealing with any concerns people might have with sex or gender. But we can also break into the bigger political conversation of the delineation between sex and gender. So let me just quickly say hi to YouTube. It looks like YouTube's doing fine. Yeah, feel free to share your guys' chats there. Snowdrop, I was also hoping that people would chat on YouTube as opposed to here on Discord, just as a little note, if you are able to chat on YouTube. So does anyone have anything to say about the sexes? Is there any disagreement? Anyone who has like a an argument as to where biological science should be going? Like, is there good reason, for example, to include intersex as its own sex altogether? Go ahead, Casey.
Yeah, well, somewhat more like wanting to ask a question, because what I'm seeing when we're looking at a functional level, considering reproduction as a role, then yeah, I can understand it being the binary model. But if we're looking at anatomical, then that's where I'd be looking at it more as a spectrum, like intersex, I guess, if we want to condense it into a third category, as opposed to just, I don't know, because you could have so much on the spectrum to then make it however many categories within that. But that would be kind of my question around it, if that makes sense.
I mean, that's a good question. We could see how that is dealt with, but it seems like based on what I was reading, like differences of sex development, DSDs, is the category where they would handle things like intersex, and any other atypical variations. They just wouldn't consider it to be a new sex taxonomically. And I guess someone would maybe want to present an argument as to why it should be. And you're saying like there might be a functionality reason as to why you would consider it another sex.
Well, in terms of like the determination mechanics being binary, that's again like that makes sense to me. But then the differentiation of just the observations that we make outside of whatever kind of role they might play in reproduction, that's where I consider it bimodal. And that's kind of what I'm seeing when I'm trying to look some of this up with the robots.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of saying that like DSDs exist and those are going to play like in practice a different biological role than male or female, or there's going to be different emergences out of that than male or female. And I think that's well understood, but I think it's handled as like I guess like why don't you expand a little bit on why you might think it's not categorized, or like where do you see some stumbling blocks with regards to the current taxonomic like order of things? Like, can you give a specific example maybe?
Yeah, because and I'm still kind of just like trying to work this out. So you've got like the function of reproduction where you'd have the male and female. I don't know if any of these disorders might cause it to be to where someone cannot reproduce. I don't think that's the case for all of them. I'd have to look it back up, but I think there are variations where you might have oh God, I'd have to look up exactly which ones. But
I'm looking
I've
at it
seen
right
before
now.
that some of them there's okay.
So-
which
so-
ones
so
would have
yes.
like? I would imagine many would have complications,
Yep.
but still capability. Yeah.
Yeah, many DSDs are associated with reduced fertility or complete infertility. However,
Mhm.
being infertile does not create a new biological sex. Biology distinguishes sex from fertility. So DSD, so complete androgen insensitivity syndrome is completely infertile. Individuals have testes, but no uterus or ovaries, and do not produce eggs or functional sperm. There's also partial androgen insensitivity syndrome, as we talked about earlier. Fertility varies, but is often impaired. Congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Many affected females can conceive, though fertility may be reduced depending on severity. So there's still potential for reproduction there. Klinefelter syndrome. Most are infertile due to severely reduced sperm production, though some can father children with assisted reproduction. So there's hope there too. Turner syndrome. Most are infertile because the ovaries do not develop normally. Again, most. I think it's Swyer syndrome. Completely infertile because functional gonads do not develop, though pregnancy may be possible with donor eggs and hormone treatment if a uterus is present. So, okay, so technology has taken that complete infertility and given hope. Why infertility doesn't determine sex. In biology, sex is defined by reproductive organization, not by successful reproduction. For example, a man who has had a vasectomy is still male. A woman who has gone through menopause is still female. A person born with functional gonads, and this is talking about man and woman by the traditional usage. A person born without functioning gonads is still not considered a third sex, because humans still have only two reproductive strategies organized around sperm or eggs. The key concept is organization toward a reproductive role, not whether reproduction is ultimately possible. Okay, so the academic consensus is many DSDs can cause infertility. Infertility does not imply the existence of a third biological sex. DSDs are generally understood as atypical developments within the human male-female reproductive system rather than evidence for additional sexes.
Okay, now here's another question that I have, because I know with many of those intersex, well, and that's so confusing for like, okay, yeah, I guess intersex just being, sorry, this is hard for me to wrap
That's
my
all
head
right.
around. Biology, my thing.
Yeah.
But so because a medical disorder is characterized by an abnormal functional condition in the body or mind that causes distress or impaired daily functioning. So I know with plenty of those conditions that there is going to be some type of impaired living where they might need to
Right.
take certain, but is that applicable to all of them?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I think a good thing to ask my system here, why are we justified in calling all of these DSDs disorders when in some cases disorder may not be apparent? So this is an important and one that has been debated in medicine, philosophy of medicine, and intersex advocacy. Yeah, by the way, everyone, everything is philosophy. There is no philosophy. There's a philosophy of everything. All conceptual organization is philosophy. So if you're one of these people who thinks that oh yeah, philosophy had its time, or philosophy, you know, it's just where you go to like waste time or come up with questions. No, philosophy comes first before everything. Conceptual organization comes first before medicine. That's why there's a philosophy of medicine. There needs to be a place where you can go to do things like, uh, ontology of medicine, because the correct way of doing ontology is not written on a stone tablet from Abraham or someone, some religious figure passed on down from God, and this is the correct taxonomy of medicine. No, there needs to be a philosophy behind it. And anyways, so we are not always justified in calling every DSD a disorder. This is why many clinicians and researchers now prefer the term differences of sex development, which that's what DSD means. In brackets, it will say often referred to as, like I read earlier, also called disorders of sex development. But it does seem like they've stopped calling this disorders of sex development. It's more differences of sex development or variations of sex characteristics in at least some cases. Why they were called disorders, and this is interesting. These are great questions, Casey. This is good information. The 2006 Medical Consensus Statement introduced the term disorders of sex development to replace older terms such as hermaphroditism. The intention was to create a medically useful classification for congenital conditions involving atypical chromosomal, gonadal, or anatomical sex development. In medicine, disorder often means that development differs from the statistically typical pathway in a way that may require evaluation or treatment, not necessarily that the person is suffering or disabled. Why some object to, quote, disorder. Many people with intersex traits argue that they are healthy and experience no medical problems. Their bodies function well. The label disorder unnecessarily pathologizes their biology. The term can contribute to stigma. For example, someone with complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, I'm going to just start saying CAIS, may live a healthy life without discovering the condition until adolescence or adulthood. Similarly, someone with Klinefelter syndrome may never receive a diagnosis until investigating infertility. In these cases, the disorder may not be apparent in everyday health or functioning. Why many physicians still use disorder. Some clinicians defend the term because many DSDs can involve infertility, increased cancer risk, hormone deficiencies, adrenal crisis in some conditions, ambiguous genitalia requiring diagnostic evaluation, or other medically significant issues. From that perspective, disorder identifies a category of conditions that may warrant medical attention, even though severity varies widely. So the philosophy of medicine perspective, whether something counts as a disorder depends on the theory of disease you adopt. For example, biostatistical theories associated with Christopher Boers define disease as a deviation from statistically normal biological function. So under that philosophy, these would be disorders. Or under harm-based theories associated with Jerome Wakefield, argue that a disorder requires both biological dysfunction and harm to the person. So under that theory, obviously, many of these would not be considered disorders. It would be incorrect in calling them that. So, and this is why, philosophy of medicine, philosophy of science is so important, because we have competing, taxonomical ordering theories, categorization theories. So under a harm-based account, someone with intersex variation who experiences no impairment might reasonably argue that they do not have a disorder. What's the current trend? There is increasing recognition that not all DSDs are alike. Good, that is true. Many clinicians now distinguish between conditions that clearly impair health or reproductive function and variations that are primarily anatomical differences without significant health consequences. For this reason, terms like differences of sex development have become more common in some medical centers and professional discussions, although disorders of sex development remains widely used in clinical literature. So the justification for calling DSDs disorders is not universally accepted. It depends on, just to summarize, the definition of disorder being used, the medical consequences of the special condition, and whether one adopts a statistical, functional, or harm-based conception of disease. How does that sound, Casey? I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, that answers my question pretty well.
Hmm.
I do still understand why we would classify it as the binary structure either way, because once that function is interrupted, whether it's due to the intersex conditions or if somebody just wasn't wanting to reproduce at some point in their life or whatever, that doesn't change that we're looking at a biological function
Right.
for reproduction.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fantastic. Anyone else have any thoughts on the sexes? Go ahead there, Perry. Perry is muted.
So
Oh, there.
I'll be quick, and then I think I saw Tyson unmute, and I'll hand him over the mic. So I did a quick search. Sorry, I'm out of shape.
That's all right.
Where was it? It said there the number was like 0.05% of people have DSD, have a DSD of some sort,
Right.
and that may depend on what we mean by disorder, as you were laying out. Now, as a philosopher, I hate ambiguity, right? I think it's a vice. And so I like to disambiguate as much as I can, but I see nothing wrong. I was always under the impression that you throw in intersex as a third category for whatever reason, but I have no
Yeah.
issue either way. I
think
imagine
it's-
since
yeah. Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say
Well,
the
go
important thing about today. I used to think the same as you, Perry.
Yeah.
But I've come to realize quite recently by some studying I'm doing related to the book, my first book I'm writing, that I was incorrect about that. I don't know where I was getting that information, but that intersex, that the most up to date modeling was that intersex is considered a third sexual category. Yeah. So I think it's important to get this right. Also, when you say DSD, that doesn't include disorder in that labeling.
You're right.
That refers
that it
to
was also
different
differences.
differences of sex development, and then
Right.
the more archaic way of saying this would say disorders of sex development, but that's been updated, and for the most part, it looks
Sure.
like that's being adopted as the correct posture.
Yeah, and wisdom is found in specificity. So if we want to disambiguate, I mean, what I would care about is the differences, the type of DSDs that do cause harm. So whichever person you listed who includes, I think you mentioned one has the biological function and potential. I mean, I care about the harm from a normative perspective. But yeah, I have no issue updating my belief on the. I mean, listen, there's no escape around the normativity of describing things and putting things into taxonomical clades.
Yeah.
So
all of that is meta-normative. Like there is no escaping that. That's why when people say like science,
no
science is and science is, it's science based on facts, science is this and that, and they completely discount like the philosophy layer that gives rise to the actual ways. Like there's nothing, like, again, there's nothing written in stone anywhere that says the ontology of chemistry needs to look like the periodic table. We just decided that. We decided it.
Yeah.
Like
a type of is-ought gap, honestly, in a way.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. So yeah, I mean the periodic table can be demonstrated in all kinds of different ways. You could imagine it could look like what's it called? Astrology, except this would be grounded in observable, repeatable modeling, but it could look like an astrology book. You're flipping through the astrology book of elements, right? It doesn't have to look like the way the periodic table is laid out, but a lot of thought by way of logical consistency and by way of how we like to organize things. Again, born of our sentiments in science, we like to set up nice, clean charts and something that can fit on a page where we can understand the body of chemistry as we understand it. So, but that's all normative. Like we made it ideally up, like the Easter Bunny, except again, when it comes to copper, what copper is, regardless of what you want to call that, the facts still remain about copper.
Yeah. Yep. Just to smuggle in, my hate or dislike for ambiguity, I would want a periodic table to not be ambiguous. The pre-Socratics kind of had a proto-periodic table with earth, wind, water, and fire, whatever it was. So yeah, they were doing the same thing. The only reason I bring up the point, this will be the last thing I say, the 0.05 and the normative taxonomication of things is because, that's really a big number if you think about it. 0.05, if that is the case. Yeah. I just did a quick, Google AI, but that's what a few.
It sounds right.
That's millions.
Based on what I know. Yeah,
that's millions of people, and so
yeah, of course,
we should. And I'm sure we'll get into maybe some trans, more social type of gender stuff. You also mentioned the reproductive roles. I think that's a good thing, a good essence to have on how we taxonomize these things. But that's a big portion of people is all. And if we don't include them as a third category, we need to label them one way or another and consider them, which we do. And science is doing a better job than probably what I could do with it. But that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll go to Tyson next. I wanted to read a YouTube comment here. Someone said, my Catholic school, someone by the name of Mock, welcome Mock, says my Catholic school
That's
was
me,
teaching
by
it.
the way.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, it is.
Mo
It's
Casey.
your same.
Yeah.
Oh, Mo Casey. Mock. I'm such a boomer. My Catholic
You
school was
totally
teaching
could have
it.
played with that, Casey. You missed an opportunity there to troll Travis.
I prefer
Yeah.
to be honest, sir.
Yeah. God, no trolling, Perry. Perry, you're banned forever. My Catholic school was teaching it as having the spectrum when I was in 5th grade. Was that in reference to sex being on a spectrum or gender?
Yeah.
Or
it was thought that
synonymously?
you got the male, female, and intersex. So I considered it at least 3 categories. Yeah.
Right.
Which I just thought was funny coming from a Catholic school on top of that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like they were, trying to keep up to date. And honestly, that's something I can look at. Like, was there ever a swing in, like normalized public teaching and curriculum where that was taught? And obviously, in the case of your Catholic school, this was the curriculum, which is interesting. Lost in Space Time says there are 2 biological sexes and at least 1 socially constructed sex, being the Burbash that we present in many Native American tribes. Okay, that's really interesting. Hopefully, you can jump into the Discord with us, Lost in Space. That would be really cool to hear what you're referencing with regards to Native American tribes. I'm actually going to see if my system could pull up anything about that. That just sounds too interesting for me to ignore.
From what I'm seeing, it has to do with the gender. So.
Oh, it's more gender. Yeah, it sounds like gender. More human Particularly, at least one social in most academic disciplines, actually a term now widely regarded as outdated and offensive, did not refer to a socially constructed sex. Instead, it referred to what anthropologists historically describe as a gender role or gender category in certain indigenous cultures. The preferred modern umbrella term is two-spirit, although many indigenous scholars emphasize that each nation has its own distinct traditions and terminology. Okay, that's cool. I haven't heard that term before, but it sounds like it's considered widely considered an outdated and offensive term. So yeah, and I think it says here that it refers to a gender role, not another additional sex. But again, the commenter might be engaging with the more traditional usage of sex, where gender and sex are kind of interchangeable. So let's go to Tyson Tosin.
Of course. I was just going to ask, simply put, usually from my understanding of sex and biology, the differentiation happens on the level of chromosomes, for instance. And when I'm talking about chromosomes, like take for instance even something like the sea slug, where they're hermaphroditic and they will fight each other to impregnate each other, for instance. And when you look at gene and trait expression, you can't necessarily match certain genes to traits, but human beings tend to show up on spectrums in any physical characteristic. And I think sex happens to be one at certain points in time, but our primary is, yes, male, female. So in that sense, I do agree it's binary, but I think biology is a fluid thing.
Yeah, biology is it's an open topic, nothing set in stone. But what I outlined is what is considered academically relevant. What you're talking about hasn't come up yet, but I am asking my system to see, and we can outline how the two sexes are differentiated in science, and then we can maybe ask some further questions along the line of the spectrumization you're referring to. So in science, the deepest definition of sex is gamete type. So we went through that. That is the core biological distinction. Everything else, chromosomes, gonads, hormones, genitalia, secondary traits, is part of the development system that usually supports one of those two reproductive roles. Gametes, typical female pattern, eggs, ova, typical male pattern, sperm, chromosomes, double X. Add one more X and then it is prohibited. I'm just thinking back in the day when you went into like a video rental store and there was like triple X on a video. Typical male pattern, XY. Gonads would be for female, ovaries for male, testes, internal anatomy for female, and this is typical female pattern, uterus, fallopian tubes, vagina, internal anatomy for male,
Correct.
Epididymis, vas deferens, and seminal vesicles and prostate. External anatomy, typical female pattern, vulva, clitoris, labia. Typical male pattern, penis, scrotum. Primary hormone, he just said scrotum. Primary hormones, not homo. Typical female pattern, estrogen, progesterone dominant. Typical male pattern, testosterone dominant. Puberty pattern, typical female pattern, breast development, ovulation, menstruation. Typical male pattern, sperm production, deeper voice, facial hair. Adam's apple. No, it doesn't say Adam's apple here. I just added that. In human development, chromosomal sex is established as fertilization, but visible sex differentiation begins later. Early embryos have undifferentiated gonads and genital structures that can develop along typical male or female pathways. why chromosomes are not the deepest definition. Chromosomes usually predict sex, but they are not the final definition. For example, XX usually leads to ovarian development, XY usually leads to testicular development, but DSDs can disrupt this pathway. Someone can have XY chromosomes and develop female typical external anatomy, as in complete androgen insensitivity syndrome. Someone can have XX chromosomes and viralized external anatomy, as in some forms of congenital adrenal hyperplasia. So science does not define sex simply as XX or XY. Chromosomes are a major causal layer, not the ultimate definition. Why gonads matter more than genitals. Gonads are closer to the biological sex function. Ovaries are the organs organized to produce eggs. Testes are the organs organized to produce sperm. External genitals are often used at birth for sex assignment because they are visible and usually correspond to gonads and chromosomes, but they are still a proxy. In DSD cases, chromosomes, gonads, hormones, and genital anatomy can be discordant. Medical literature describes DSDs as conditions involving atypical or discordant chromosomal, gonadal, or anatomical sex development. The cleanest academic formulation. Human biological sex is differentiated by reproductive organization toward one of two gamete types, sperm or eggs. Then in normal development, that organization is expressed through a coordinated cluster. Chromosomes lead to gonads, lead to hormones, lead to internal ducts, lead to external genitalia, lead to secondary sex traits, and then eventually lead to gender. DSDs matter because they show that these layers can come apart, but they do not show a third reproductive sex because there is no third human gamete type and no third reproductive role.
Correct. But I would also implore you to look at chromosome variations, because you can also have XYY and XX, and I believe 3 X's in the chromosome category, or maybe even a variation of the 3. But
there's
but normally you do get
naturally, there are a lot of naturally occurring chromosomal variations. So, and this is a good place to go next. So chromosomal variation, and again, the idea of getting all this information to the transcript is that someone can take this transcript or someone can take this information. If they're listening, if they're falling asleep listening to this, it'll be the correct academic information. So chromosomal variation is one of the main reasons people sometimes think sex is defined by chromosomes alone. In reality, chromosomes are an important development mechanism, but they are not themselves the biological definition of sex. Typical human sex chromosomes, we just went through it, XX female, XY male. Most humans fall into these two categories. Now let's look at naturally occurring chromosomal variations, which there are a fuck ton. These results from errors during meiosis and early embryonic cell division. So karyotype is where we're going to get the 45X Turner syndrome. Karyotype 45X, common name Turner syndrome, typical phenotype female, estimated frequency 1 in 2,000 to 2,500 female births. Then we have 47XXY. Klinefelter syndrome, like we already went through. This is the typical phenotype is male, 1 in 500 to 1,000 male births. That's not as rare as people might think. Then we have karyotype 47 XXX, XXX, triple X syndrome, typical phenotype female, 1 in 1,000 female births. Then we have karyotype 47XYY. So remember, we went through XXY, XXX, and XYY. XYY syndrome, typical phenotype male, 1 in 1,000 male births. Karyotype 46XX and 46XY categorized under the same karyotype. This is called chimerism. The typical phenotype is variable between male and female. It is extremely rare. They don't even give me a 1 in whatever. It's just so rare. But that's very interesting. I'm going to write that out if someone wants to research cases relating to that. I put it in the YouTube chat.
Travis,
Yep.
it's called chimerism.
Oh, chimerism, not chimerism. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Chimerism. 45 karyotype 45 X and karyotype 46XX, mosaic Turner syndrome, typical phenotype female, estimated frequency extremely rare. 46XY and 47XXY, mosaic Klinefelter syndrome, typical phenotype male and extremely rare. Other mosaics, there are other mosaics that aren't even outlined here. The common name, there's various common names, typical phenotype, variable, and they're all extremely rare. So what causes these? Chromosomal variations arise from events such as non-disjunction. Chromosomes fail to separate properly during egg or sperm formation. Mosaicism. Chromosome changes occur after fertilization, so different cells carry different karyotypes. You said it was chimerism, right, Robin?
I think it's chimerism.
I think she said
Oh, chimerism.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Chimera.
Two
Chimerism.
embryos, chimera. Yeah. Two embryos fuse early in development, producing an individual with genetically distinct cell populations. Interesting. These are well documented biological phenomena. Y chromosomes alone don't define sex. Again, consider these examples. XX male. A person can have 46 XX chromosomes, but develop as male if the SRI gene, normally on the Y chromosome, is translocated onto the X chromosome. XY female. A person can have 46 XY chromosomes, but develop as female in conditions such as complete androgen insensitivity syndrome, or I think it's Swyer syndrome or Swyer syndrome. Their chromosomes are XY, but their sexual development follows an atypical pathway. These examples show why biologists generally define sex by the reproductive system and its organization rather than by chromosomes alone. Are these additional sexes? Mainstream biology says no. Chromosomal variations are understood as variations in sex development, not new sexes. There's no evidence of a third type of gamete, a third gonad analogous to ovaries or testes, or a third reproductive role in humans. Instead, these conditions involve atypical development within the existing male-female reproductive framework. The development hierarchy, a useful way to think about it is chromosomes help initiate development. Specific genes, especially SRI, when present and functional, influence gonadal differentiation. Gonads produce hormones. Hormones shape internal reproductive structures, and then hormones and receptors influence external genitalia and secondary sex characteristics. At each stage, genetic or developmental variations can alter the outcome. This is why sex-related traits do not always align perfectly, even though the underlying human reproductive system remains organized around two reproductive roles. This developmental model is the one taught in modern developmental biology, genetics, endocrinology, and reproductive medicine. Casey drops the what the hell is his name from Jurassic Park? Life finds intersex way. I love it.
I mean, yeah. I think it was pretty funny though. It kind of underlines like how even sexes characteristically could change over time. Even we could evolve in a way that allows us to be hermaphroditic even. But yes, there are two genders, or not two genders, two sexes specifically right now. But there are variations though.
So what do
in
you
that taxonomy?
Variations in what? Because it sounds like
How it's
you're
expressed.
it sounds like you're trying to contradict at some level what I just read.
Not really.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
saying there's just
When you because when you start adding variation, when we're dealing with the question of how many sexes there are two. That's the academic standard. There isn't like variation. There are two. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Do you think that? Okay. So
It's not what
when we're
it's not
talking
what I
about
th- it's not what I
male-dominant-
it's not what I think. It's not what I think. By the way, I'm
I
just
know,
giving you
but
the
this is
academic
like,
consensus.
This stuff is. I mean, in academic consensus, though, there is usually discussion within the domain.
Yeah, but just because no, hang on, Tyson. We got to use language very carefully here. Just because there are conversations in the domain does not mean the academic consensus is not what I've just delivered here.
Yes, and I agree with the academic consensus, but I was just trying to open up a line of discourse.
Okay, but I think it's important when we open up lines of discourse to not confuse listeners or other people that there are more than two sexes academically.
Yeah, but
I just think this is really important. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and there are a lot of people in like the secular atheist community, for example, when Richard Dawkins says there are two sexes, that is the academic consensus. People will jump down his throat being like, see, he doesn't even know about that, when he's right about that. However, Richard Dawkins is deadly, deadly wrong about gender. He needs to dust off his old study boots and study why there was a delineation between gender and sex in the past 20 plus years in the literature, in academia, for good reason, for the same reasons why you would do that when you find like new fossils in evolutionary biology. You need to account for it. You don't just say like, well, I mean, let's just fit this new fossil that has nothing to do with this other category of species. No, of course you're gonna crack open a new can of Bud Light when that happens.
I mean, yeah, take human species, for instance. There are different characteristics of human species, such as Neanderthalensis having thicker bones than Homo sapiens.
Yes,
or
exactly.
Homo forensis being very short.
Yeah,
however, like, what is human is on a spectrum, even.
Well, yeah. I mean, what do you mean by that? What is human is on a spectrum?
Well, human species, or like what we would consider human traits. Like, for instance, when you go from Homo, when you go all the way back to what was the earliest Homo sapien? From like more primate-like traits in Homo erectus to traits that humans have evolved out or bred out of. Right.
Like
That's all.
Australopithecus or something.
Yeah, Australopithecus.
I mean, here's what I. Yeah.
All I'm
here's
trying to say is like,
yeah.
even testosterone levels, height, things that are biologically male can have variations in them as well. Nothing
of
more
course.
than us.
No one's gonna. I would be shocked if someone disagreed with that. Yeah. So, does anyone have anything to say on sex, or any questions, or before we go into what will maybe be the more contentious category of gender?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with what you said. I think that like other animal species are recognized as having more than two sexes, but like within the Homo sapien and like our recent ancestors that and even all of our closest relatives in the ape family, there are only two sexes that are recognized. The difference between the sexes.
Sorry, Robin, before you move on to that, can you give an example? Because it's my understanding that the academic consensus is no known animal species has more than two sexes, in the sense of having more than two gamete types, like we've been talking about.
Well, the gamete type. I think there's several fish that are recognized as having more than two sexes.
Are you talking about sequential hermaphrodites? like
I,
clownfish
I'm
and
not sure of which ones they are, but I know that like
Okay.
because gam like it's like gametes is part of the suite of things that are identify sex, but I don't know necessarily. I mean, there are some animals that can like they do sex all on their own, so
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
only one sex. So
Well, this is what I'm talking about. So let me go through this because I want by the end of today everyone to clearly understand what the academic consensus is, and we can give opinions on the academic consensus, and that's a big goal for me today. So we're not out there getting this information wrong. So the academic consensus is that there's no known animal species that has more than two sexes in the sense of having more than two gametes, gamete types. There are only two gametes in species, including essentially all animals. Large gametes, eggs, small gametes, sperm. This is one of the foundational principles of evolutionary biology. However, there are several biological systems that people often confuse with more than two sexes. So we're going to go through those. So number one, more than two mating types does not mean more than two sexes. So many fungi, algae, and some single-celled organisms have dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of mating types. For example, Schizophilum commune has thousands of mating types. Tetrahymena thermophilia, I think it is, has 7 mating types. These are not animals and they are not additional sexes under the gamete definition. Mating types determine compatibility for reproduction but do not correspond to different gamete sizes. Number 2, sequential hermaphrodites. Some animals change from one reproductive sex to the other during their lifetime. Examples include clownfish, male to female, bluehead race, I think it's called, female to male. These species still have only two sexes. Individuals transition between them. They do not create a third sex. Simultaneous hermaphrodites. Some animals possess both male and female reproductive organs simultaneously. Examples, earthworms, garden snails, etc. These organisms perform both reproductive roles, but there are still only two gamete types. Eusocial insects. In species such as honeybees and ants, you see queens, workers, and drones. These are castes, not sexes. Workers and queens are female, drones are male. By the way, is this where the idea of caste systems comes from? Because that would be very interesting. I'm going to ask that after this. Number 5, species are unusual. Species with unusual chromosome systems. Some animals have XO systems or ZW systems. This word, haplodiploidy, something like that. These alter how sex is genetically determined, but do not create additional sexes. Why evolutionary biologists say there are two sexes. Modern evolutionary biology defines sex as anisogamy. I think that's how it's pronounced. Anisogamy means reproduction involves two different sized gametes, large gametes, eggs, small gametes, sperm. Every animal species reproducing sexually uses these two gamete classes. No third gamete type has been discovered in animals. Could a third sex evolve? In principle, evolution can produce remarkable reproductive systems, but to qualify as a third sex under the gamete definition, a species would need a third distinct gamete type that plays a necessary reproductive role alongside sperm and eggs. No known animal species has such system. So biological feature being gamete types in animals, more than two, no. Counts as more than two sexes, no. Mating types, fungi, protists, well, we don't have to go through it again. We went through it all. Is that clear? Because it did seem like, Robin, you believed that there were more than two sexes in some species.
No, I had to deal with something a minute, so I stepped away while you were reading.
Oh,
but like,
okay.
I've always been under the impression that that sex included like a suite of things, and like that gametes weren't necessarily the only consideration. Like,
Well, I didn't. So I didn't say it's the only consideration, right? So, as we've read through a lot of information here, like we would have to go back, but it wasn't the only consideration, right?
okay, okay, well, like I just know that there's like in as far as like rows of like there are in like certain birds there are like 4 different distinct like breeding roles that these birds will take.
Yeah.
So there's like they consider that
Yeah.
4 individual sexes as far as
No.
breeding patterns.
No. That's not for individual sexes. The roles does not have to do. You're talking. I think you're talking meme level as opposed to gene level there, but either way, the roles would not be considered as sex classifications, unless someone
Yeah, I think
has
that would be.
competing information here.
I think that would be socially categorized in those communities. But because I also was looking up to see what species might have 3 or
Right.
more. And the responses I'm getting are like you could have a binary type of sex, but that still works off of the 2 types of
Right.
large or small gametes. So
Yeah.
these can shift between whichever type of reproduction they are engaging in.
And for anyone that wants like the biological sex definite at like academic definition, there it is right there. I'll put it on YouTube as well. And again, like we can get into, because a lot of people have learned things in say like high school sciences or college when they went to college, and taxonomically this stuff changes. There are category shifts in this stuff, but the goal of today is to make sure we walk away with the accurate, clear picture. I want to remove ambiguity. I want to remove any kind of like pressures towards wanting to say like, oh no, but like, at some level it's being discussed as spectrumized. Like I want to actually get the right information today. That's the goal. So that's why I'm being a little stringent with some of the language when people interject and say like, yeah, but there's conversations about that. I will grant you until the cows come home that there are different conversations happening in every scientific field that are outside the scientific consensus. Like, of course, but what we ought understand today with regards to sexes is I want everyone to have a good academic picture of this, and then. Yes, of course, we can talk about like the edge cases or presentations that are being made in biology seminars to create a new taxonomy or to delineate in a different way or to consider an additional sex. But the mistake I hear most, and this is a mistake I used to make as well, is considering intersex a third sex, which is just academically, demonstrably not the case, at least at this time.
Can
Go
I
ahead,
add
Zoe.
one caveat to that?
Yep.
I think you should look up ovotesticular DSD because that is one exception to what you're saying.
I don't think it is. I just went through the DSD literature, and I don't. Can you write that into the chat so I can check that through my system?
Yes.
Because that would change all of biology, right? Like if you're saying that there's a
No, I agree with you. I agree with you across the board. I'm just trying to be hyper nuanced because in that case, typically even when someone doesn't like necessarily produce gametes themselves, if they have ovarian tissue or if they have even uterine tissue or testicular tissue, even if they're not capable of that actual production, we still categorize them as that corresponding biological sex. But in cases of ovotesticular DSD, it's combined into a single organ. So it's just like, I would say just the one exception I think is important to know
Ooh,
about.
yeah, I don't think it's an exception, but I want to check that. So
Yeah,
you're
that's
saying
fine.
it's
Yeah,
called
please.
what is it?
Ovotesticular DSD. Yeah, please look it up.
Testicular.
I'm not pleased, but you know what I mean. It's just
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
an
yeah,
interesting
yeah.
piece of information.
No, I want to make sure.
Yeah. Although I do agree across the board. I'm just trying to be hyper nuanced.
Yeah. So, okay, over testicular differences of sex development, DSD is probably the strongest example people raise when discussing whether there are more than two biological sexes. It is also one of the rarest DSDs. In short answer, over testicular DSD is not generally considered a third biological sex in mainstream biology or medicine. It is considered a rare variation in sex development. Like, we did go through the long categories of DSD, but let's get into this more. What is ovotesticular DSD? An individual with ovotesticular DSD has both. Oh, thank you, by the way, Zoe, of bringing this up, because this is interesting. An individual with ovotesticular DSD has both ovarian tissue and testicular tissue. Wow. This may occur as one ovary and one testy, and an ovotesty, a gonad containing both ovarian and testicular tissue, or different combinations. Chromosomes can vary. It can be the 46XX, like we talked about, most common worldwide, or the 46XY, or mosaic chimeric, right? Karyotypes. Can they produce both sperm and eggs? In theory, the presence of both tissues types might suggest that possibility. In reality, functional production of both sperm and eggs by the same individual is extraordinarily rare. Most individuals have one tissue type that is poorly developed or non-functional. Fertility is often reduced or absent, though there are documented cases of fertility in some individuals, typically through one reproductive pathway rather than both. There are no well-established documented cases of a human naturally producing both functional sperm and functional eggs and reproducing in both roles. Did this create a third sex? Mainstream biology says no. Why? Because biological sex is not defined by having unusual gonads. It is defined by the reproductive system's organization around the two gamete classes. Ovotesticular DSD represents mixed gonadal development, not a third gamete, not a third reproductive role, and not a third evolutionary strategy. An analogy here: imagine someone born with 6 fingers. That does not create a third kind of hand. It is an atypical development outcome of the human hand. Similarly, ovotesticular DSD is understood as an atypical development outcome of the human reproductive system, not evidence of an additional reproductive sex. Why this condition is scientifically important: ovotesticular DSD demonstrates that sex development is complex, of course. Developmental pathways can diverge from the typical XX ovary and XX testes pattern, which is interesting. By the way, this was one of, when we went over the ontology of the variations in between XX and XY, there was a category at the bottom of like the rarest conditions. Remember, it didn't give us all of those conditions. This would be one of those conditions that my list didn't provide. Chromosomes, gonads, hormones, and autonomy do not always align perfectly. It does not demonstrate that humans have more than 2 reproductive sexes, of course. The evolutionary perspective. Evolutionary biology defines... Okay, we already did this. No such system as identified in humans or any animal species. Okay, yeah. This is really interesting, ovotesticular differences. So if I scroll up, this would have been, where's my list? Yes, when we were looking at karyotypes, other mosaics, the common name, there are various. This is one of those varieties, typical phenotype variable. This was variable because we're dealing with male and female anatomy. And then the estimated frequency is so extremely rare that it's not even given a statistic here. But yeah, very cool, Zoe. Thank you. That's interesting.
Just to be clear, not a third sex, just an exception from the typical classification where we look at any residual ovarian or testicular tissue.
Exactly. Very cool. Someone in our chat says, sorry, that streamer mode thing doesn't show me the name. Categorization is a human project. Yes, it is. That's the philosophy. That's the taxonomical layer, the philosophy of science layer. Whether we consider intersex individuals as separate sexes or not is rather kind of moot. Nature is just going to do. You are right. You're talking about the meta-normative layer of all of this. This is why there is a philosophy of science, a philosophy of medicine, a philosophy of biology. At some point, we need to put our stake in the ground and say, we think this is the best taxonomical, conceptual organization because it serves these kinds of purposes better. And all of that is a normative enterprise. So you are correct about that. Anyone else have anything cool on sexes before we crack the gender egg?
Some of you are interested in intersex, right? Maybe intersex. Interesting.
Yeah. We went through intersexing in great detail. Yep, that was interesting to go through. Not considered a third sex by academic standards. It's considered a DSD. Not to be confused with a disorder, because our old dead founding fathers of some of this taxonomy would call these things disorders, but now they're not calling them disorders anymore because, like KC rightfully pointed out earlier, a lot of these sexual conditions or atypical emergences don't cause disorder. People aren't disordered by them. They live perfectly happy, normal, healthy lives like anybody else. It's just at some point, if they decide they want to try to have kids or something, it might turn out that they find something new out about their anatomy and their biological makeup. Anything else? Robin, did you have anything else? My dear? No? Okay. Well, we talked earlier about how 20 plus years ago, there was a necessary delineation between gender and sex, where the traditional concept of sex and gender used to be kind of used synonymously. And then over 20 years ago, there was a necessary delineation because the phenomena was noticed that what we're trying to capture when we talk about gender, this emergence of identity by different, categorical experiences within the human condition, best traced through psychology and social sciences, that is demonstrably different than sex. So this is why there's a delineation between sex and gender in the academic literature over 20 years ago. Now, there are a lot of scientists out there, for some reason, that they don't study this, or they just think this never happened, or they think it happened for political reasons recently because, a politician they might not like is saying, like, a woman can have a penis, or a man can, have a period. Like this kind of stuff gets said, and then it causes people to go nuts because based on their traditional understanding of what gender is, there shouldn't be a delineation. Gender, a woman is a biological female. A woman can't have a penis. So it's like this was delineated a long time ago. We should kind of, if we want to be accurate to where academia is at, you want to update with where taxonomy and categorical conceptual organization is going. Really important if you want to call yourself an empiricist, if you want to call yourself a person of science, you got to update with this. So there's people like Richard Dawkins who get this wrong, where Dawkins will correctly say there are only two sexes, man and woman. And he'll fuck himself right there when he starts conflating terms. And I consider Richard a friend of mine, and I have emailed him about this. Never emailed me back. I don't know if we're friends anymore, but I just think people get this wrong. Lawrence Krauss is a friend of mine. Another person who gets it wrong. Stephen Pinker is a friend of mine. I think, Steve has a more nuanced understanding of this. He's more focused on, like, when people get this wrong, he doesn't want to see them, like, tortured by their peers or, thrown out of academia for getting this wrong. Although they heel digging on this particular issue is just strange as hell to me. It's crystal clear if you immerse yourself into the studying. Now, some people are going to say, well, the whole gender thing delineation came about because of politics and because, like the blue-haired trans people want to take over the world and shit like this, which it's the most anti-scientific thing someone could say. I would say about the biological sciences, because if you look at the history of when this came about and the reasons for the delineation and the movement towards a different taxonomy, there were good scientific reasons to do that. It was more parsimonious. It was more detailed. It captured in more detail the human experience. But yeah, we can talk about gender. Anyone who's interested to chime in on that. If anyone has disagreements, or I don't even know if many people in the room are going to have many disagreements. This might just be a short episode today. But yeah, the mics are open. Did you have something, Min? You're unmuted.
Well, the whole gender thing is something I don't get very much because it's the discourse around it is pretty toxic, to be honest.
It is so toxic, unnecessarily toxic, in my opinion. But
yes, and even I'm in the circle, people call LGBTQ. I don't get the gender stuff because people, like I'm a homosexual person, right? So I'm attracted to people because of their sex, not because of how they identify themselves. So the gender thing is confusing to me, so I don't. Yeah, I try to stay away from it.
I mean, when it comes to attraction, like some people are attracted to trees, right? I mean, you're attracted to biological male bodies, right? Some people are attracted to particular kinds of gender expressions that might be like, oh, my gender expression is kitty cat, whatever. And then someone's like, oh yeah, that turns me on. I'm attracted to that. I'm with that. That's what I want. So yeah, when it comes to attraction, yeah, maybe you might find it hard to understand, but you get that people are attracted to all kinds of things, right?
Yeah, that I know. I read a little bit on paraphilia, so I know there are many attraction that we consider unusual or weird. That's just variation of human attraction.
Well, yeah, and some obviously, maximally anti-social and destructive, like pedophilia, right?
That too, yeah.
Something. When we talk about the gene editing world, like we've had some conversations recently about like the ethics of gene editing. Is our entire society is going to agree that things like cancers and pedophilia and different genetic predispositions ought to be edited out of all potential genetic outcomes for all future children, because maybe they will frame it that they have rights to not have pedophilia, or they have rights not to have genetic predispositions to cancer. That's where I think this conversation becomes most interesting, when we start talking about genetic disordering and how we're going to treat that in the future as societies. But do you understand, Min, like when I say, okay, so based on the traditional usage, I think there's two common usages of, say, like what a woman is. What's that edgelord's name who goes around asking people, so what is a woman? And then some people just like stumble a little bit with the words, and then like conservatives whack off to that. Like so like what is that? What is that guy's name? Does anyone know the guy I'm talking about? He's got glasses and he looks like kind of a dork. Not that there's anything wrong with being a dork. Matt Walsh. There we go. Thank you. So yeah, this guy, Matt Walsh, would be like, so what is a woman? And then people will stumble over like describing it as a gender expression, right? They'll try to give more nuance and words, and try to explore within the answer, a more detailed answer. But everyone wants a quick answer like biological female. And if you go any longer than that, people are going to this is this guy's a cuck, or he's he's just fighting for and this guy wants transgender people to read to my children books and turn them into transgenders. Like, that's where people's minds start going when they hear stuff like this. But there are two common usages, right? So woman, the most traditional usage would kind of treat gender and sex synonymously, like woman means biological female, and the more I would say academically accurate description of woman is that it is one of many gender expressions. And you can get into many different, like into more detail. That particular gender expression tends to coincide or have a lot to do with female biology and the female sex, but there are a lot of other things that come with that. It has to do with socially constructed roles and different things like this. But it's important for people to also be able to articulate this stuff cleanly to help educate people who are very uneducated on this, and a lot of people who think that, oh, you have to have only one common usage. No, I mean, like, if you go to your grandparents' house and you say, you see someone walking down the street and it looks like a trans woman, and your grandparents say, no, that's a cross-dressing man. A lot of elderly people aren't going to understand that scientific academic delineation and the importance of it 20 plus years ago, and the importance of what kind of bigotry and all of this that accompanies misidentification and talking down to people because they're different and all that jazz. So I'm not saying that everyone has to go out there and that it's necessarily going to be best for your well-being and those around you, that you go into your 90-year-old grandma's house and try to educate her on this. I'm not necessarily saying that that's the case, but there are right and wrong answers when it comes to what does academia, our highest schools of learning, have to say about these concepts, as opposed to what's more colloquially common. Anyone have anything else on that?
Have y'all noticed that there seems to be so much fixation specifically on male to female transgendered individuals and less so on female to male? And I think that that's because of like male ire, like they're upset that they're going to get like tricked somehow.
Yes.
I think that their own insecurity with their sexuality themselves plays a big part in that. I would think so.
All I have to say to those males who are going around with that insecurity, or those men going around with that insecurity, I mean, try it out. Like, you might like it. I mean, like, I'm being serious about that. Like, people get so stuffy when it comes to sexuality, and there's all these guys saying they can't find a mate, they can't find a date. Like, I've played this game with a lot of my more conservative friends where I send them pictures of like, oh, dude, look at this.
Me too.
Yeah, dude, look at this chick I just took a picture of on the side of the road. She's in the background. Look how hot she is. They'd be like, oh yeah, fuck, man, the things I'd do to her. Yeah, that's a trans woman. Oh, fuck you, Trav. Fuck you. You're just trying to trick you. No, I'm just telling you that a trans woman can pass as someone attractive to you as a straight biological male and someone who would call themselves a traditional man. I'm just stating that. I'm not saying you have to be into penises and testicles and things like that, or male butts. But I'm just saying that don't trick me into saying that you find this disgusting completely when I show you something like this, and you don't act with disgust until you understand a little more information about what you're looking at. Aesthetically, you are not disgusted, and I just demonstrate it to you.
Yeah, and we know this because, I'm so sorry, Robin, go ahead.
No, you're exactly right. Though that's the problem. The fact that they are fooled by it, though, is what causes them such distress, and like it has gotten, several trans people killed because
Yeah.
they passed enough to get to the point. And that, so that, I mean, that is a problem. Like, it is a problem. That is one of the problems they have with it. And another point that they also will make is, why would anybody who's a man want to change to a woman? Because being a man is just so much better.
I think like everyone in sexual circumstances and anything else, that it is the responsible, good, and righteous thing to do to make yourself fully known to people who might be interested in you or who you are interested in. Not that you have to unveil all of your secrets of your mind, but and I've had conversations with trans women about this. I think 1 out of 100 maybe have disagreed with me on this, but they agree that, like, you understand that you are in a world, and if you're being hit on by someone who claims to be a straight male, and you're a trans woman, it's not only like, you can think about it from a safety perspective, but not only from that perspective. I just think it's the good and righteous thing to do, and the honest thing to do, to be true and open about who you are with that person, unless you feel like you're in danger. And if you feel like you're in danger, get the fuck out of there. Like, don't like get some help or call for help, and get the fuck out of there if you feel like you're in danger. But I think being honest is very important in these situations. And also for anyone out there, where I have to say this, is anyone out there who feels like they have any tendency of being violent towards someone because they quote unquote trick you into something, you need to sit with yourself with those feelings. Don't go out there and graft those feelings of violence onto anyone else. You need to deal with that before you go out there into the dating world, because it might so happen that someone out there, you feel tricked in a situation. You need to not be violent in situations like that.
There is this toxic masculinity that I think we're trying to outline here as to why the male to female, man to woman thing is so pertinent. And I think, like, holding truth above, as we always talk about, well-being, is a huge issue for this reason.
Yes.
I think for the majority of the time, lies or not telling the truth are often much more benign than people make it out to be, especially when it's coupled with this toxic masculinity. There was a few weeks ago, I was lurking in the side chat of, like, the TAV, and there was a bunch of pictures of women, like great looking women, and they're like, oh yeah, like, we have these discussions once in a while. We bring up Ann Coulter, and then we bring up people who we actually think are, like, attractive and stuff. And later the next day, I found out that they were trans women. I'm like, oh shit, I guess I'm gay now. So,
right.
But no, so one bone to throw. There's, like, the competitive sports area where a lot of people bring up the man to woman transition. I think that's a legitimate thing to bring up, where we could probably, I don't know what the environment is nowadays with that phenomena, but obviously a male who's well past their puberty by a few years and then they transition seems to conduce to an unfair advantage. So, but I think that usually when people bring up those talking points, it does come from the, like, icky disgust part of maybe how they feel some sort of bigotry in there. So there's a lot of social morality, we can just call it for lack of a better word, that needs to be developed more by the human condition.
Yeah,
Um,
most definitely.
well, I hope that if Travis decides to explore the sports area, that he goes into the academic on that too, because
Oh, that'll be
Yeah.
a great one.
the assumptions that we make right there end up not holding up when you like go into somebody has hormone therapy for long enough. The advantage disappears.
Sure.
In fact, that most studies show that they actually become at a disadvantage to the cis females.
Yeah,
over-
we have
So,
we have a
so
lot of great
Robin-
science on this, by the way. But yeah, you guys finish first, and then we'll get into it.
yeah, no, I'll just ask Robin one hypothetical question. If we demonstrated that a person who has transitioned has an unfair advantage based on those standards you're bringing up, how much hormone therapy, what levels of testosterone and or estrogen and all of these other things do they have, if they were shown to have an unfair by those standards advantage, would you be against them competing against?
Yes, but the
Yeah.
thing about it is that like I can get. I don't have them with me right now because I didn't know this was what the show was going to be about. But I have access to all of the peer-reviewed studies on this, and actually, after a certain amount of time on hormone therapy, the trans women are actually shown to be at a somewhat of a disadvantage to the cis women.
Yeah, I heard
Well-
you the first time, but I'm just, yeah, it sounds like you agree, though, that they need to meet a certain threshold, which I would agree with.
But yeah,
But yeah, I don't know the empirics on it entirely, but I can definitely see how it would actually lead to a disadvantage, and that would be an interesting side
sport-
conversation as well.
Yeah, the governing sports bodies were all taking care of this. This is just like some kind of like social intervention of sorts that were people bent to the will of the public, I think, instead of following the science.
Yeah, can I add one comment to that actually? Because I find it very difficult to care about these people that typically also enjoy making fun of women's sports, suddenly really caring about high school volleyball. Like, I just don't buy it. Like, I don't think it's in good faith. I think it's just a vector of attack most of the time. And I think it should be up to the sports bodies, personally.
I would just like to say, Perry, that they used to. There was a time when they used to allow women and men, like the first women competed with men in the Olympics.
Sure.
And,
Hockey, right?
No, it was.
I thought Trav brought up hockey was one of those things.
Well, I'm saying one thing I use is that when we're going the other way, when we're looking at trans men, not trans women, there's no problem. Like when it comes to like the NHL hockey league, right? Because biological females are allowed to attempt to compete in that sport. It's just, I think and I think most sports are actually like that. Like if there was a female goalie at one time in the NHL. She didn't play for long, but she played at that level. And there's nothing in the NHL rule book that says females cannot play in the NHL. So it's already completely open to that. It's just the other way around, that in the professional female leagues, males are not allowed to play in those leagues. So I tend to find that that's where the conversation tends to be focused on. But if people will allow me, I can read a bit of information into the record here. So number one, male puberty creates large average performance advantages. So elite male advantages over elite female athletes are typically about 10 to 12% in running and swimming. Larger in strength, power, throwing, jumping, collision, and combat sports. The drivers are testosterone mediated puberty, greater height, limb length, bone size, shoulder breadth, muscle mass, fast twitch power, cardiac size, lung size, and hemoglobin. Number 2, testosterone suppression helps, but does not erase everything. Hormone therapy in trans women lowers testosterone and hemoglobin into the female range fairly quickly, which matters for endurance. But multiple reviews find that lean mass, muscle size, strength, skeletal dimensions, and some power advantages can persist for years, especially if male puberty occurred. A 2021 BJSM review found strength, lean body mass, and muscle area declined, but remained above cis female levels even after up to 36 months. Number 3, newer evidence complicates the simple, quote, permanent advantage claim. A 2026 BJSM systematic review meta-analysis of 52 studies concluded that trans women had higher lean mass than cis women, but measured physical fitness was often comparable. It also stressed that the evidence is low certainty, heterogeneous, and weak on elite athletes and sport-specific outcomes. The policy problem is not, are trans people bad? It is a category design. Women's sport exists because average male puberty advantages are large enough to swamp female opportunity. Inclusion matters, but so does protecting the female category. That is why policies increasingly vary by sport. Low contact recreational sports can justify inclusion more easily. Elite strength, speed, collision, and combat sports have stronger fairness, safety reasons for restriction. But I also should say that, like, even in the NHL, I mean, it's a sport that sanctions bare knuckle fighting between combatants. You get 5 minutes for fighting. Females can find their way into the NHL. It obviously has only happened, I think, once with a goalie which was short lived. So the question is, well, the thing I'm concerned about is, like, I want to see trans people included wherever possible, but we should not pretend that male puberty is irrelevant.
Well, I just want to say that this is why this is one reason why it's important for children who are trans to be allowed to transition before they go through puberty, and so that they don't go through these physiological changes that will be life altering for them, and so, like, because most, I think, like, it's a generally most trans people, like children, will begin to recognize something about being trans maybe as age, or like age 3, because they'll be like, I'm a girl, instead of, everybody's like, my friend Stephanie always said that her father and mother called her a boy all the time, and she would say, but I'm a girl, and she know as soon as she was old enough. But I wanted to bring up to tell.
But hang on before you go. Are you suggesting, Robin, that at age 3, children should be transitioned?
Well, they like, there's age appropriate gender affirming care, and so at age 3 you don't do anything other than if they call themselves a girl, you can let them wear a dress. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's, I mean,
I'm just testing out where. Yeah.
Well, there's no need to transition anything else. Like, the only time that you have to, once they get to where they're getting ready to go into puberty, then and this is to allow them more time to make to come, because they have to have so much psychological like intervention too. You give them puberty blockers so that it prevents them from going through the puberty as the wrong sex.
Yep.
That's but you don't do anything to children, because they don't require anything. There's nothing about gender affirming care that is necessitates any kind of, like, hormones or anything for a child. Like gender affirming care plans are worked out as age appropriate. So
Yes.
they do. So
Yep.
they don't give little kids. They don't do any kind of like sexual, any kind of surgeries on children. That's a big lie that was told a lot. That mean age, I think, for even someone who does ever have like bottom surgery is age 30. I think is the median age of the most people who have that done.
Yes.
And sometimes they do allow some females, like if they were female assigned at birth and they are going to be transitioning to a boy, then they will at their age 16 they will allow them to have some sort of top surgery. But the thing about it is they also allow gender affirming care for boys, like overweight boys who have large breasts too, and nobody ever complains about that. But it's only the ones that are wanting to transition to a boy from a girl that
So
they
you
complain about.
outlined, yeah. Thanks, Robin. You outlined social transition as kind of that first stage for young people. Then you talked about puberty blockers, and then around age 16, which is the consensus, what might be introduced is cross-sex hormones. Then after that, the next step typically is considering surgery. There is much stronger agreement that genital surgery is generally reserved for adults. Chest surgery for minors has occurred in some jurisdictions, but remains controversial and uncommon. Many countries now discourage or prohibit most surgeries in minors. But yeah, this particular corner of this discussion is when we start talking about, because people will generally use general terms like, oh yeah, they want to transition 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, where transitioning could mean like social transition, right? Which is like if a child is like, I want long hair like a girl because I'm a girl and I want to wear girls' clothes. I want to wear, I want girls' toys. I want things like this. And I don't want to wear boy stuff. I want to look like a girl and things like this. That would be like the social transition stage.
I'm personally fine with all of that. It seemed like we shifted away a little bit more generally to the transition and gender affirming care, and I am totally for all of that, Robin. Like, it should totally correspond appropriate to their age. And I'm huge on informed consent, of course. That would be a huge deal for me. But it's with the sports, particularly, that I was throwing a bone to the toxic masculinists who kind of make these arguments. Trav read off some things like, even when they do go through puberty, they still have things like broader shoulders or more lean mass, even if that doesn't translate necessarily to more physical strength. And I'm simply saying these are all important things. It sounds like the jury is not out the way that you were kind of posturing. I need to do my due diligent research more so than just listening to you and Travis, of course. But my worry, I'm not convinced of either proposition just yet. I don't think the jury's out.
The jury, just before Robin responds, I just want to clarify what Perry was saying. What do you mean the jury's out? Clarify that piece. What do you mean?
Yeah, Robin brought up, she's got kind of this archive of studies showing that it's like much more plausible in the majority of the time that even after they go through puberty and then they transition, they are often at a disadvantage because of the gender affirming or hormone treatment or whatever they go through.
I mean, what I'm curious about is not like what studies people are going to bring up that I care about the scientific consensus. The new studies are interesting, But we should always say that this study seems to indicate this. We should not be drawing conclusions until academia has had their chance to build a consensus on a particular study. You want to look at what's being said about the study by other academics. Is this study as relevant as it is being used or claimed to be? So, like, you know, and we want to make sure we are not counting the hits and misses and not counting the misses when it comes to studies like this as well. That's why the consensus is so important. But go ahead, Robin. The floor is yours.
Yeah, very it's not like right away either. Like the sports bodies that were managing this were requiring like he said, by go like 36 months. That's a year and a half. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So some of these people were having to stay out of the sport.
That's 3 years. 36 months is 3 years, by the way.
Oh, yeah, 3 years. Okay. Some of these people were having to stay out of the sport for like, a distinct amount of time, and they were having to be tested like for this thing. But you were talking about this. This is another thing though that, okay, in 1992, there was a shooter who participated for the Chinese team, like just shooting and just, Olympic shooting. And she was allowed to participate with the men because it was like a co-ed sport, and she won. Yep. And the next Olympics, she was not allowed to participate. And the men
let's pull up that case.
The shooting was not allowed to be co-ed anymore after this.
Chinese Olympic.
Her name was Zhang Shan. ZHANG. And then SHAN.
Okay, cool. Let me look at this.
She competed in the 1992 Barcelona Olympics and hit every target. And
they were sexist, I imagine. But how does this translate to the transitioning?
Because you were talking about the toxic masculinity part of this.
Okay, yeah,
sure.
This is an anecdote. Yeah, this is an anecdote in support of that. So her victory is okay. Yeah, this is a cool story. As is one of the most remarkable athletes in Olympic history of the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona. She became the first, still the only woman to win an Olympic gold medal in an individual shooting event that was open to both men and women. Yeah, very interesting. Won gold in mixed skeet event at Barcelona. She hit 200 of 200 targets in qualification and finished with an Olympic record of total of 223, defeating a field of 40 men and 5 women. So there were 5 other women competing as well. Why is she famous? Her victory is often discussed because of what happened afterward. The skeet event had been a mixed sex Olympic event since 1968, allowing men and women to compete directly against one another. Before the Barcelona Games even took place, the international governing bodies had already approved changes to the Olympic shooting program. As a result, there was no women's skeet event at the 1996 Summer Olympics. Women were not permitted to compete in Olympic skeet in 1996, meaning Zhang Shan could not defend her title. In 2000, women's skeet returned as a separate women's event rather than mixed competition. Because the rule change took effect immediately after her victory, many people have interpreted it as a reaction to her beating the men. However, the historical record shows the program change had been approved before the Barcelona competition was held, even though its timing made the optics highly controversial. So I don't think this actually does demonstrate what we think what we originally thought it demonstrates. Yeah. Did she ever return? Yes. After women were reinstated in the Olympic skeet. Yeah. So the decision was made before her victory. After women were reinstated in Olympic skeet as a separate event, Zhang Shan competed again at the 2000, where she finished 8th. She also continued competing internationally for many years, winning medals at world championships and remaining competitive into her late 40s. Why her story is important today? Zhang Shan's achievement is frequently cited in discussions about sex differences in precision sports because skeet shooting depends heavily on visual tracking, reaction time, and coordination, consistency under pressure, rather than maximal strength or endurance. Her victory demonstrates that at least in this discipline, a woman was capable of outperforming the world's best male competitors on the Olympic stage. At the same time, one exceptional athlete does not by itself establish that men and women have identical average performance across all sports or even all shooting disciplines. Her accomplishment remains historically unique and is widely regarded as one of the greatest individual performances in Olympic shooting history. Fantastic story, but I don't think it does demonstrate the sexism issue we were talking about.
Even if it did, I don't think that it's really hitting the G spot of what I'm trying to get at with.
And what is that G spot exactly, so I can hit it over and over again?
Yeah, no, I'd love to after the show tell you about it. But listen, Robin, I may be like I may be like a liberal in a toxic masculinist body. I may have watched too much South Park where they did the meme of, oh yeah, and the guy starts going in for women's sports and dominating on it. But from what I've heard, there is this issue. It doesn't sound like consensus is out. The jury is out. And, maybe we should just have a whole, if not tonight, a whole, live topic dedicated to this. But
I'm gonna try to get you those papers because, I didn't have them, and I think that it would be beneficial for you to look at them. So
100.
May I add one comment? Robin, I did want to back up what you were saying about how most top surgeries in minors are done on cisgendered boys. 97% of top surgeries are done on cisgender boys for excess.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense, because what demographic, like what statistical number does trans male and trans females make up anyway? Like it's just so microscopic.
Yeah.
But yeah, isn't it funny that people do bring that up? I think that's a really good point.
Yeah. If I want to be hyper generous to the people that are suspicious of transitioning from minors, like social transitioning, I would say if I just want to be super generous to them, what I would say is I think they're worried about pathologizing normal childhood behaviors. Like just because a little boy wants to play with girls' toys doesn't necessarily mean that they're trans. Exactly. Nor vice versa, right? And I think in their heads they imagine a situation where their parents see them and be like, "Oh, you're trans, right?" and like really encourage them, even though that isn't really a thing that happens.
Yeah, they might be like, "Oh yeah, social transitioning must start now because you like to wear girls' clothes and play with girls." No, that's completely ridiculous. Yeah,
that's what they're imagining in their heads. I think my concern actually is more so how they're using it as a guise to like protect women. Which, like, when I bring up all the time, it's like, I don't want some guy outside of the women's bathroom inspecting my genitals before I enter the bathroom. Because also, I think it unfairly targets masculine-looking women in a way that, cannot pretend that's under the guise of protecting women. That's crazy to me.
I have a couple aunties, and I love them to death, and I'm not going to say which ones I'm talking about, but yeah, they might be on the receiving end of some negativity there.
How many aunties do you have? I mean, we could do process of elimination.
Shit, I only have two, and I said plural. Now I'm fucked.
I drove a truck. I wore bib overalls and work boots.
Oh, so Robin's trans.
You know what I mean? And
yeah, you're trans. I do all the talking. I have long hair.
And the thing about it is I put my hair in pigtails and stuff. But like. I was in Tennessee regularly and going into women's bathrooms, and I was always kind of prepared for the ideal that there would be somebody that would contest me going into the women's bathroom one night. I mean, it never happened, but I was always kind of prepared for it to happen.
Did you ever get your cock out? Is the question.
No.
Sorry. Interesting question.
But it was just like that. Yes, thank you, Peter.
Yikes.
But I would not have been I would have been. I was pretty much prepared mentally for this to happen at some time or another, because of the over, the panic.
Policing.
That seemed to, the panicking that was going on, like that was just And I guess maybe, because I'd been going there to the same place. I went to the same place all the time. Maybe they got used to it. Maybe it wasn't expected, but like, I would be somebody that I would, in some of these instances, it would not have surprised me if I would have been, like questioned on that, because
Very Family Guy.
I did not look very girly, like when I worked, when I was hauling milk,
I don't think anyone in here is pro toxic masculinity or is posturing that way. So at this point, I feel like we'd have to do the case by case study. I also just wanted to throw a bone to Peter. Peter seemed to have been ready to jump out of his seat on a few of the things that Robin was saying. I feel like it may be interesting to hear Peter's thoughts on like 3-year-olds and the proper gender affirming care for them and so on and so forth.
Yes.
No, carry on.
Fair enough.
Robin, with you though, I mean, with trucking, it could have just been a lot lizard,
A lot lizard.
For a little bit
A mobile lot lizard. Yes, a mobile lot lizard.
I wonder though, like Robin, did you see, like, I know there's probably a nicer term we could use than lot lizard, but just curious, in your trucking career, what was the lot lizardry like?
Oh, well, some places it was worse than others. I actually got into it with a lot lizard once in Denver in
the knife incident.
Yeah, the knife. Yeah, we pulled knives on each other.
Holy shit!
Yes.
What was that over? If you can disclose.
She's trying to rob her.
Oh, yeah. Give us a detail.
No.
Come on.
There was a couple of the guys that were drivers that were my friends that were in the parking lot, and we were all on the radio, our radios in our trucks, and I just mentioned, somebody hollered at her, and I just mentioned that she had been like in like 3 trucks, and I hadn't seen her like, like take a shower or anything.
Oh.
So she got mad over me saying that, and so she came to my truck with a knife, and but I had like a knife that was like twice as big as hers. And
Did you pull like a crocodile Dundee? Did you pull the crocodile Dundee? Yeah, no, I love that.
Yeah,
This that's not a knife. This is a fucking knife.
Yeah, because I always carried a big knife. Like I always had a big knife. I did not carry a gun in my truck. I carried a big knife.
Oh my God, I love humanity.
That was like 25 years ago. That was a very long time ago. Yeah, but most of the places like that right there, they cleaned them out. Nashville was real bad. Memphis was real bad. There was a place, like I said, Denver was pretty famous for it. There was a couple of serial killers that went through, and they and then they started clamping down on that, because there were several women. There were several women that were killed by some serial killers that were
Gary Ridgway. I think Gary Ridgway, he picked up some of his victims at truck stops as well, but I think they were all prostitutes. But
that's what a lot lizard is. Yeah. But they kind of clamped down on that, and got, like most other places, tried to clean that up. So
because I don't want to leave the stream going too late tonight, I was thinking it might be TAV time. For everyone on YouTube who comes across this, we have a digital tavern in our Discord server here, where we go after we are done discussing, and we just hang out and partake in only legal substances and legal discussions and things like that. So if you're interested, join our Discord server. I'm going to give you the link one more magical time. And yeah, I think it was fun to do this episode tonight. I think we shared a lot of good information. Hopefully we've updated our epistemics, and we can feel good about ourselves as we drink our sorrows away in Trav's Tav here on Discord. Thanks everyone for contributing. It was nice to see some new faces back. Min, of course, it's always great to see your face.
Zoe, you should join more often.
Yeah, you should. 100%. 100. And Perry, you should probably consider not joining as often. That would be that would kind of be great if.
Yep. Well, whenever Zoe's in here, I'll take my absence, and then we could take turns.
Oh,
Perfect.
I see
Yeah,
what's
we can
happening
have a
here
new
already. I
calendar.
mean, like, just
Love
to broadcast it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. It's tab time. Remember to maximize well-being for yourself and those around